Okay.
Oh, it's recording.
All righty.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. All right. Your internet connection is unstable. Well, that's because you're unstable. Well, we should be seeing everybody who's gathered up in the boxes here, right?
Well, we're not going to see anyone since we are in webinar mode. So they are here right now. We have currently 75 attendees. So we'll just give it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Maybe like 2 minutes and then.
Oh yeah, I see 76 up there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just automatically joining, and that's what.
And then Vicki can do the introduction, right, Vicki?
Correct.
Okay. It's just that one time of day when the sun comes in the window and blinds me when I'm sitting here. What are you gonna do? 81 and growing. It's growing, I tell you.
Paul Trespa.
I put in a last minute plea this morning, by the way, on Facebook. So if there are any last minute registers, that could be why. Okay, well, yeah, okay. There. All right.
All right, Vicki, I think we might as well get started with your intro. I'm going to mute myself, but I'm here to help if we need it.
Good morning and welcome to the BHC's first second Saturday program of 2021. My name is Vicki Hefner and I am the education curator and your host this morning. Ben Neely, our executive director, had knee surgery before the holidays and is unable to join us today due to a physical therapy appointment. Before I introduce this month's presenter and program, I'd like to tell you about a new series of virtual programs the BHC is initiating, calling Third Thursdays. So this January's Third Thursday program on the 21st, starting at 7 p.m., is our good friend Dave Klein. And he will present American roots and folk music, the history, myths, and lore. This 1 hour live broadcast will include a look at the history of American songwriters, musicians, and the situations that help them connect with a worldwide audience. February's second Saturday program on the 13th starts at 10 a.m. and it is Carr Bloss and the Civil War Soldiers Orphan Schools of Pennsylvania, which includes Berks County's Bethany's Orphan Home, which started caring for soldiers or orphans in 1863. Mr. Bloss is currently the Emeritus Archivist at Bethany Children's Home. The BHC is excited to partner with the Museum of the American Revolution during Black History Month on February 18th, starting again at 7 p.m. This Third Thursday program is a presentation entitled "The Same Principle Lives in Us, People of African Descent in the American Revolution." That night, we will examine American revolutionaries' struggles with the key question, would the words of the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, apply to all people? Now, please let me introduce another good friend of the Berks History Center, Paul Dresba. This past fall, Paul, along with Paul Schumann of the Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club, led 2 hikes on Neversink Mountain. First, we did the east side, and then we did the west side. Today, he will share with us the fascinating history and incredible pictures of a time when resort hotels, recreation areas, and electric railways made Reading a true destination city to visit. All right, Paul. Are you ready?
Thank you. I'm ready. I am going to, I've been told that my microphone is a little weak, so I'm going to move closer to my microphone and camera. And if you can still see my face, well, my apologies for that. At any rate, let's see, I should be, there. And I'm putting the program here on the screen. There it is. Okay, now we're ready to go. Okay, it's been quite a while since I did this for the Berks History Center. My first Neversink Reading's Other Mountain book, the first edition, was published in '03. And that's 18 years ago now, believe it or not. And, you know, if anyone present today was there for that program, well, God bless you, first of all. And secondly, it's going to be a different program anyway. For one thing, I've learned a lot in the ensuing time. And this picture that you're looking at is the cover of the second edition of Neversink, which was published in 2012. And so there's a lot more information in here. It's actually a larger size book, and it's better pictures and everything. So let's get started. All right, you're looking at Reading about 1895, and at that time on your far right over here, if you can see my mouse, or my cursor, that was the Neversink Mountain Hotel. Neversink is over there. Over here on Mount Penn, you really don't see anything up there because the pagoda hadn't been built yet. It was really a time of busy, hardworking people in Reading, mostly due to the railroads that made and okay, I'm getting strange messages from Zoom as I talk, but and now I can't see my picture anymore. All right, hopefully everything is still okay. At any rate,
Paul, are you able to
around
bring
this,
your pictures back up?
you can't see the picture?
No.
Don't know why. You cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. Okay.
Oh, I see what happened. Just give me a second.
Okay. I don't have any of the options on my screen anymore like I did
For
before.
whatever reason, it bumped me to being host. So I made you host again, and you
Okay.
should be able to pull your pictures up.
Well, it's all I see on the screen is my program. I don't see any pictures of me, which is just as well.
Oh, you're going to have to click share screen again.
I can't. I don't have any options on my screen.
Oh, okay.
Not at the top or the bottom. Oh, Lordy. Let's see. I have a little amber box over here. And I'm clicking on that, but nothing is happening. Exit minimized video. Okay, back to this. Now I have the share screen. This will stop others screen sharing. Yes. And okay. I think I'm here again. Can you still hear me?
Yes, and we can see your slides.
Okay, I guess we're ready to continue that. Okay, great. All right. Again, this is Reading about 1895. And you're seeing the Pennsylvania Railroad right down the middle on the other side of this steel bridge, which is the one that was here before the concrete bridge that was built, I think, in 1918 or 1919. At any rate, at this time, there were a lot of exciting things happening. There were mountain railroads being worked on, and one was over on Mount Penn. That was the Gravity Railroad. And one was being created over on Neversink around the same time. And that was the Neversink Mountain Railroad. Now, at that time in the late 1880s, the trolley system was just being electrified. And here is a picture of an early trolley car from Reading. This is a single track trolley car, truck trolley car, which means that the collection on the bottom here of where the wheels were, there's only one of those in the middle of the car, which kind of made the car unstable, and it could actually rock off the tracks if too many people were on one end of it. But most of the cars that were being used, in fact, all of the cars on the Neversink Mountain Railroad were double truck. They were a lot more stable. Here's an early picture of a Neversink Railroad car. And these could be customized. Up on the top here, it says Clapperthal and Reading. And in the middle, Neversink Mountain Railroad. It has controls on both ends, which is a good thing because there was no way for the cars to turn around on Neversink Mountain. And so when the driver on this end, let's say, got to the end of the line, he would stop, get out, turn the trolley pole around, turn the seats back the other way, and get on the other end of the car, and then they'd go back home. So these were strictly one-way cars. This is a map that I wished I had had when I printed the book, even the second edition. And but now what I do is when I sell a copy of my second edition book, I include a copy of this map in it because it's such a good map. It shows all the turnouts where one car could pull off and let another one go by. It shows all the rate of descents and everything else that, you know, had to do with the railroad. And up here, of course, is 9th and Penn. That's where the railroad started and came out. One thing I noticed when I got this map was that here is the Neversink Mountain Railroad car barn. And I wasn't aware of that when I did the book, but it shows it as being around 9th and Bingham. And here it is. Here's what's there today, or in 2016 anyway. This picture shows, it looks like a car wash and maybe a quickie food mart. But at that time, this whole lot here was the Neversink Mountain Railroad car barn. And that's where the cars would be stored at night when they weren't being used, and also repaired when they needed to be repaired. Now, here is a picture of a concrete foundation. And my friend Dave Klein put a picture that he took up. He was up there yesterday, I think. And he put this up on Facebook this morning. And there are 3 of these. And it actually is the foundation of a cable car system that was designed to take rock that had been chipped with picks out of the side of Neversink down to Clapperthal Junction and crushed and then brought back up. And that's what forms the rail beds up on Neversink. So if you're on a road that's gravel and the rocks are white, that's original rail bed. If the rocks are bluish gray, like most driveway rocks are, then it's not original rail bed. The cars were powered by water-powered electric, and that had never been tried before. This is the original power plant, which is down on the Schuylkill River, and the dam that you see behind it is the big dam. as they called it, and the wheel was right behind this building. And the power plant was designed to run the cars on Neversink, but unfortunately, it would send maybe one car up the mountain, and it wouldn't be able to send more than one. So they had to put some locomotives into service for the first few years to take some of the cars around on Neversink, because the power plant wasn't strong enough to push them all up the hill at the same time. Here's one of those locomotives that was borrowed from the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad. This too was customized with Neversink Mountain Railroad on the side. Not all of the cars were pulled up with this, as they were at the beginning on Mount Penn, but some of them had to be. And here's a picture from about 1893 showing a now electrified trolley car, if you want to call it that, on Neversink Mountain. And it's passing a number of water barrels on the side of the hill, which are kind of left over there from the days when the steam locomotives were taking the cars around the mountain. The reason I said trolley car, if you want to call it that, is because these trolleys were built not to trolley gauge, but to railroad gauge. The people that funded this project were Reading Railroad people, and really didn't know anything about trolleys. And so they did it to railroad gauge and had the cars built on top of that. Now here's a little ad for the Lair cigar store. I always like this. It's you can see a man running in saying, "Hold up till I stop in Lair's for my cigars." And there's a Neversink Mountain Railroad car waiting for him down there. Yeah, like they're going to wait for you. Now here's a car that is waiting for passengers at 9th and Penn. And you can see the gentleman sitting on there. This car would hold 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 30 people, I guess, maybe a little more. Some of these slightly larger cars held more, but we'll show you those in a bit. You can see the advertising up here, just like you have on buses and subways and stuff now. And there were little awnings that came down in case it got sunny or a little rainy. Now, this was an open car, which the people who rode the trolley loved this, because it was really easy to get on and off, a little bit too easy as far as the trolley company was concerned. And also, when you were running, there was a nice breeze blowing through the car. So it was very comfortable. But the trolley companies hated this because it was too easy to get on the car without the conductor noticing and getting a free ride. Here comes a car down the south side of Neversink, and it shows a red car. It also shows a kind of a psychedelic rock formation on the side. These postcards, well, any postcards really up until almost 1950 were hand colored. And the artist must have been in a really odd mood this day. Here's a page from the Neversink Item, which was a newspaper, a little tabloid that was put out by the railroad interests. And it promoted whoever was willing to buy an ad in it. Plus, it had a timetable of the Neversink Railroad in the middle. The timetable was about the same as the one that eventually ran down to Carsonia Park. It was about the same schedule. Okay, we're going to kind of visit the attractions on the rail line as they showed up. Here's the first one. It's the White House Hotel. And down here on the bottom, the track that comes in, this is the one that came in from Reading. The car would come up there to the end of where the tracks are. The car would be turned around, the pole would be turned around, the seats would be turned around, and then the car would come up this way to get on the mountain. The hotel was actually over here behind the trees. Here's another picture of the hotel. It shows the conductor changing the trolley pole. And this is a closed, full-size car. as I said, all the cars were double truck on Neversink. Most of them were made by the Brill Company in Philadelphia. And they would just take truck, the train trucks is what I'm trying to say. The things on the bottom are the trucks, and they would take these, which were meant for trains, and just build a trolley car over the top of it. At the White House, they mainly did water at the beginning in the late 1890s, but eventually they did sodas too. This order car allows you to order and so that would be after McKinley was assassinated, which would be 1901. Here are some bottles over the years from the White House Hotel. The oldest one is right here in the middle.
Oh, could you
Yes?
just stop for a second because it has bumped you off as host and you need to bring the pictures up again.
Okay.
I've made you host again, but right now we just have a black screen.
Okay.
So you
All
have
right,
to
I'm
go
coming.
down to the screen share.
I have no option to go to the screen share. That's gone again, just like it was last time. All I have is a picture on the screen and I have no options. I'm able to change pictures on my program, but I have no options as far as the program itself.
Amber, are you there?
I am. Paul, try minimizing everything till you can see the Zoom screen again.
Well, I don't even have an option to minimize. I don't have any options at all. All I can do is change pictures on the program, but that's all I'm able to do.
Okay, hit your escape button on your keyboard.
All right.
Did that make it shrink down a little bit?
Well, I'm back to my program
Okay.
in PowerPoint.
Okay. Well, when you hit the escape button, do you see now at the top the ability to minimize your PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, minimize that.
Uh-huh.
And then if you have other windows open, minimize those. You should be able to then see the Zooms, like our Zoom conversation again, and be able to share your screen. And then you'll just have to open your PowerPoint again.
Okay. Share.
There you go. There we go.
Okay. From correct slide. Okay. I think we're ready to continue again. These are bottles that were created at the White House Hotel's bottling works right across the street from the hotel. And the oldest one in the middle is a Hutchinson type bottle that had a metal thing that was drawn up to seal it. The rest of these were later. And the last bottle, which at this point was still filled, was created by the last person that I know of who lived at the White House Hotel. He was making wine later in his life, and he gave me a bottle of his wine. Here's a picture of the White House from the Schuylkill River. And this shows more than that tiny little thing that you saw on that first postcard. This was actually a two-story building, and most of it was hanging out over the cliff that goes down to the Schuylkill River. It had a dance hall and everything in there. It was actually a fairly big building, but you'd never know by looking at the front of it. This is a car that has come up onto Neversink, and it's now at the first junction. The choice is to take the right road, which would take it up over the north side of Neversink on the Reading side. And straight ahead would take it down to Exeter, and Clapperthal. And the switch for it was this gentleman who's right next to the pole on the right of the car. There were no electric switches, so it had to be done by hand. Here's a picture of a couple of trolley cars on Neversink that was in a trolley enthusiasts magazine. And it shows that they were operated by Edison Motors. A little bit of promotion there for Edison. Another stop on the railroad, the next one was Hawks Cave, which when I was a boy was called the Sand Quarry. And this is where pigments for paint and things like that were mined. The cave had to be closed decades ago because it was dangerous. Here's a I get knocked off again. I don't know if I did or not. Share screen. Share current slide. Okay, I think I'm back. The big open space in the middle is Heener's Spring, which there was a spring up around 18th and a half Street, which some people call the Lion's Mouth later. And this whole area was a great place to have picnics. And as you can see, most of East Reading over here is undeveloped. Way down the bottom third of the picture is Perkiomen Avenue. Anything behind that was not there yet. And it also shows a roller coaster up at the Highland House just to the right of it. That was only there for about a year. The Heener Spring was or Heener's Whistle, as it was called, was very popular with people to do camp meetings and things like that. Here's some illustrations from a Mennonite meeting around 1906. Further on down to the east, in 1892, the Neversink Mountain Hotel was being built by these gentlemen. And one of these guys, I don't know if he's pictured here or not, but I assume he is, was in charge of the horses to bring things up to the hotel site. And after the hotel was built, Al Klein, who was in charge of the horses, built this bar at 10th and Franklin Street, Al Klein's Paddock. It's a little different these days. In fact, it's a lot different, but the building is still there. Here's an advertising conception of the Neversink Mountain Hotel, and it kind of looks like Camelot. It wasn't quite that fancy looking, but it was pretty impressive. It was 300 feet long and had 150 rooms. This picture was taken at probably kind of one of those conferences, a business conference. And this is from 1896. And I got this picture from the great grandson of the manager at the time of the Neversink Mountain Hotel, who lives, I think, in St. Louis. Here's a photograph of the Neversink Mountain Hotel, which was taken from 23rd Street in Mount Penn. And you can see it was awful big, but the flags aren't on there, and it looks a little less like Camelot. Here's an actual photograph of the Neversink Mountain Hotel. And I lost it again. Let's see, share screen over here, share, and I think I'm back.
Can I just interrupt
Yeah,
for a second, Paul? Paul, can I just tell our audience that we're using a new Zoom account for the first time today? And I think that's why we're experiencing some difficulties. So we do apologize. Again, it's a brand new Zoom account, and I believe that's why we're having problems. So stick with us.
Okay.
Turn it back to you,
Okay.
Paul.
All righty. Okay. The fire took place on September 30th and at night. And fortunately, nobody, the only people that were in the hotel were the night watchman and his family, and they barely made it out alive. But this is the headline and the story in the next day's Reading Eagle. No photographs at that time, so it was just a sketch. No photographs in the paper, that is. Here's a photograph the next day after the fire. And the girl, by the way, is later identified as Ruth Kissinger Dickinson. Anybody know her? The bottom part of the hotel was stone, but the top part was all wood, which explains why there is no top part anymore. During the fire, the only people that really, there were hundreds of people that came up to watch the fire. They put extra cars on the Neversink Mountain Railroad so everybody could come up. The only people that couldn't make it up there were the fire department. There were no roads for them to get up. But this picture, it's a postcard, and I believe it was taken in the spring of '06. And the reason I say that is because if you follow the tree line along the upper right all the way over to above that square building, you see that it suddenly becomes black. And this whole area in here is charred where the Neversink Mountain Hotel fire was. The only building up there that survived, and in fact, the only building on Neversink Mountain that survives from those days is this building, the McIlvaine Pavilion, which some people insist on calling the Witch's Hat. And amazingly, it's still in very good shape. I don't know how, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. This car is stopped at the Neversink Mountain Hotel stop, which really wasn't at the Neversink Mountain Hotel. It was around the back of the mountain. And that's because the people who ran the hotel didn't want to be bothered by the noise of trolley cars. And so if you were staying at the hotel, like it looks like these gentlemen are, they're dressed pretty well, you would get off here and there would be a horse and carriage that would come down and pick you up and take you up a horse and carriage trail to the hotel so you wouldn't disturb anybody. At this, around the same place as the Neversink Mountain Hotel stop, if you just walk down the hill from there, you would come to the Centennial Springs Hotel. And this is a picture of it from about 1905. Even though the postcard says tuberculosis sanatorium on it, this picture was taken years before that. Excuse me. It was called the Centennial Springs because here's the spring, and the property was purchased in 1876 by Arthur Gray. This is taken behind the hotel, downhill from it, and it's a reservoir that we visited on our September hike with the Berks History Center. And it still looks exactly like this. There are probably still a few carp in there from when people used to bring their goldfish up here to set them free. Okay, let's see. Share screen. Where is it? Here. Here. Share. And I'm back. Okay. I'm getting the hang of this. Good. Right after the fall of the Roman Empire, the recipe, it seems, for concrete was lost. And it took almost 2,000 years for them to rediscover it. This was built right after that. Still there. This is the original building of the Centennial Springs. Down at the bottom end is where the wine vault was, and still is. You can still see the wine vault down there, and you can still see the hooks, in fact, that hang down from the ceiling. This is up at the extension of the hotel, which is now by this time a tuberculosis sanatorium. And I can tell because the building on the left, which had been open and just had picnic benches in it, now is closed in and they put beds in there. If you were a World War I veteran, you got first dibs to be in here because tuberculosis was especially a problem with veterans from Europe. Here's the whole complex of the Centennial Springs. You can still see the grapevines on the left side where Mr. Grafe used to grow his grapes and make wine out of it. And this was eventually, well, it was abandoned in the 1930s when Berksheim opened up. And that became the new sanatorium. They tried to sell this and to no avail. So eventually it was just knocked down, all except for this little house in the back here, which was the caretaker's house. And it's still occupied by the owner of the property. In the late 1930s, Anna Moyer, who's shown on the right of this picture, was a patient at the sanatorium. She had tuberculosis, of course. And this was the uniform for girls and anybody really. In the summertime, you wear short shorts and high top shoes, and that was it. The idea was to have plenty of fresh air. And if you were a teenage girl, they would let you wear a top, but otherwise, this was it. The next stop on the railroad is Point Lookout. This is the Kodak moment up there. And you can see they knocked down quite a few trees to make the Kodak moment a little nicer. It's still pretty spectacular from up there. Moving right along towards the west, the next stop is the Highland House, which you can see up at the very top left of this picture. And just to the right of that is the engine house for the inclined plane, which is kind of a diagonal railway that was built by the hotel owner in 1895 to bring the building materials up and also customers later. The railroad was built 5 years later and had to go over top of the inclined plane right here. And so the owner of the inclined plane got to park his cars in bad weather under there at somebody else's expense. This is the Highland House was smaller. It only had 50 rooms compared to the 150 up on the other side of the mountain. But this was a local hotel and it catered to local people, which the other hotel did not. This hotel lasted a lot longer than the Neversink Mountain Hotel because it did cater to local people and managed to stay in business. Now, if you were looking from the Highland House out across East Reading, you would have seen this scene about 1905 when this postcard was made. A few years later, the same scene okay. Share screen. Picture, share. Okay, next picture, please. There. This is the back of the Highland House, and this is from the late 1920s, and Prohibition was still on at this time. And it was pretty abandoned. The hotel was supposed to have been closed ever since 1919, but people down in Reading would look up on the mountain at night and see the lights lit in the Highland House. So it was one of the speakeasies around the Reading area during Prohibition. This is the newspaper article from the fire at the Highland House, which was again not an accident. Neither one of the fires at the hotels was an accident. This one went off in 3 places at once in the hotel, just like the other one did, only 25 years later. Now this would be, once you loop around and head down toward Exeter Township, if you were on the railroad from the very, very beginning in 1890, this would have been the end of the line or the terminus of the railway. This is at the Clapperthal Glen, a really deep gorge in the mountain on the eastern end. This picture was actually taken later because on the very far right, you can see part of the trestle that was built to go over the glen. But at the beginning of the railway, this was the end of the line, and you would get off here and go down into the glen and have a picnic. But a few years after the railway opened, the trestle here was built, and this shows a car returning to Reading from over the trestle with the help of the conductor's dog. This picture, which I just accidentally ran across lately, shows one of the trolleys going through the Clapperthal farm, which would be at the upper end of the cemetery, Forest Hills. And it would go all the way out to where those cannons are at the inside of Forest Hills and then loop back. But I never really noticed where that was before. Obviously, it's not in the book. Now, these are what's left of the trestle that went over the glen. And these are on the east side of the glen. On the west side, there's almost nothing. Now, a little bit up into the glen was Dengler's Glen Hotel. And Mr. Dengler paid the railroad, the Neversink Railroad, $1,000 to have a spur line built up to his hotel. It really paid off for him because his business really prospered after that. This shows, before the railway anyway, this shows about the only way to get over there, which was in a horse and buggy. There was a road that came in from around Neversink Road in Exeter at the time. This is behind Dengler's Glen, and it shows a dance hall on the left, which had been originally up at the Highland House, but when they fell on hard times, the thing was moved down here by the railroad cars. Now, these young ladies are on a car right in front of Dengler's Hotel, and they're waiting to come back into Reading. As you can see, people dressed a little bit differently back then. And men would always have a hat on when they left the house. At the end of the line, after 1892, was the Clapperthal station. And the cars would come down, and this little rail, these rails right here were the Neversink mountain rails. And the cars would stop right here. And they could let you off, and you could wait for the Philadelphia and Reading train to go back to Philly if you wanted to. Or you could come up here. The train would back up eventually and come up to the top here where it would return to Reading. The Clapperthal Pavilion was right up here on this flat, and you'll see a picture of that right now, I hope. There it is. This is a woodcut of the Clapperthal Pavilion, which was just as long as the Neversink Mountain Hotel. And it had restaurant seating for 2,000 and the largest dance floor in Pennsylvania. And again, it was made out of largely wood, but there was also a lot of brownstone in this. And this building and the Neversink Mountain Railroad were both put up for auction in 1901. And this building was dismantled immediately and was used to build some buildings on Neversink Road in Exeter Township, which are still there. This pavilion has a carousel in it, and this was at Clapperthal Pavilion just probably for about a year or so. This was sent to me from a friend of mine out in California. I had no idea before that. This shows the Clapperthal Pavilion from across the river. You can see the big dam. Just above the dam is the tunnel that goes under the railroad. And that's still there. And the power station would have been just off the picture on the right. But you can see how flat and bare the land was up there that the pavilion was on. This was the Clapperthal station right here. And Johnny Heaster's steamboat landing would have been around the same area. This is the same picture basically, but about 5 years later, and you can see the Clapperthal Pavilion is no more. The Clapperthal Pavilion was a beautiful building, but it was built in a bad location. And this badge, these are both sides of one badge. From the Reading Hardware Company, they had their company picnic down there in 1892. And there were 10,000 people down there. Reading was practically empty that day. By a few years later, this other badge down here on the right shows that the picnic was now being held at Highs Woods across the river because the air was very still and the mosquitoes were awful and over at the pavilion. And eventually they moved, I think the following year, down to Pottstown. This shows the big dam with the new version of the power plant on the in the foreground, and it shows the Schuylkill Canal lock on the other side of the river. This picture shows a couple of cars on the south side of Neversink heading towards Reading. The front car is a closed car, and the one on the back is an open. So there were both types being used. At one point, there were 12 different cars that were being used on Neversink. And it carried well over 1 million people just in the first 5 or 6 years. The Neversink Railroad stopped running in 1918, so it was operating for almost 30 years. And it just mainly stopped because of the automobile. The novelty of it had worn off. And even though I know a little bit more about Neversink than I did when I first did the book, there are still a couple of mysteries that wonder me. Here's one of them. It's a roundish building made of stone, limestone, and it has a big rectangular brown stone in the middle of it. This is a doorway, and there are window openings on either side. I've heard all kinds of outlandish ideas about what this might have been. But so far, the best one I've come up with is something like this, which is at Gordon, PA. It's a water tower. And the bottom part of it looks a lot like what's left of the one on Neversink. And it may have had a wooden top that held the water at one time, which of course would have rotted out long ago. The other mystery, and if you were along on the November hike on Neversink with the BHC, you would have been far ahead of me by the time we were on our way back to 10th and South Playground. There were only about 5 people with me. And I had said all along that I was looking for this and everybody should keep an eye out for it. And nobody found it except me on the way back. It's hard with all these leaves, that cover everything. But there were about 5 people and me who found it. And it's 3 sets of stairs that go up to, across the top is the railroad bed. And they come down to what is now the foundation of what used to be a building down there. But as far as I know, nobody really knows what that building was. Somebody might have lived there. It could have been a clubhouse for a club that, that people used to go to. Hard to say. Now, this is the last picture on my program. And I suppose, I'm not sure who's in control of the pictures here. I just wanted to mention quickly while we figure that out that if you're interested in a copy of the second edition of the book, it's available at neversink.org. And the website also includes a few pictures that are not in the book. I know there may have been some questions during the program, and let's see. I'll see if I can connect with that. No open questions. Okay. I don't know if the folks at the other end of this have any questions that were sent in, but I'm not seeing any on the screen. But that should do it. Let's see, I'm going to stop the share. And no, that's not it. I'm trying to find out. Nope.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great program. I want to say you did stop sharing your screen, so that worked. And it looks like one thing popped up in the question and answer column saying, was Mineral Springs Park along the line?
Okay, and the quick answer is no. Mineral Spring Park is behind Pandora Park, and that is on the foothills of Mount Penn, which is across the valley, across Perkiomen Avenue, and heading up the other side, up towards Eggleman's and things. So Mineral Spring Park is right between Eggleman's and Pandora on the foothills of Mount Penn, which is Redding's other mountain from Neversink.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
From Rory.
Rory Heisman asks, where was the car barn at again?
The car barn was at 9th and Bingaman, and it's where the road, Bingaman Street kind of comes up at a goofy angle and joins Chestnut Street at a point. And right before that point, there's a funeral home in that little arrowhead point there. But right now where there's I think it's a car wash is in there now. It basically looks like a big empty lot. And it looks that way because, you know, there was a big car barn there from the railroad. And when they tore it down, it just pretty much stayed an empty lot.
Thank you, Paul. Mike Scheckler asks, where on the mountain are the 3 set of steps?
3 set of steps. Oh, okay. Very good. The 3 set of steps, and I mentioned this to the hikers in November, they're around 16th Street, someplace above where 16th is. And we walked right past it on the way out. Nobody saw it, including me. And on the way back, most everybody was ahead of me. But, you know, I just happened to notice them on the way back. But yeah, they're, I'd say between 16th and 17th Street up the hill.
Okay, and then Barbara Greth asks, was the waterworks on 17th Street up from 17th and Cotton Grade School now gone? Used to be a treat.
The waterworks. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. She says, was the waterworks on 17th Street up from 17th and Cotton Grade School now gone? Used to be a treat.
That's a good question. I don't know. I know that around that area there was a big water. There's a big water tank up there, and you know, I've never been quite clear as to what that was for. I know there was supposed to have been a spring up there in addition to the Keener Spring, and maybe that had something to do with the bottling works because of the water being available there. But one thing that I did when I did the book was I really focused on what related to the railroad and the resort hotels. And there were some things down towards, you know, the city on the foothills of Neversink that I kind of didn't want to get into too much because it would have kind of confused things, I thought. I really wanted to kind of stick to the point and, you know, focus on the resort years and things. The bottling works would have been much later, I'm sure.
It looks like we don't have any more questions, but I do have a message here from Todd Good saying, thanks for taking the time to share all of your knowledge about the history of Neversink. I spend a lot of time up there and found this very interesting. Looking forward to my next trip up there. I will certainly be thinking about the history as as I tour the mountain.
Well, that's very nice. I appreciate that. And I often tell people that if I did a program like this with everything that I know about Neversink, it would take a few days. You really have to focus on, let's say, the highlights and what I would think are the more interesting things. And I've tried to do that, but there's so much more that I can't relate that's in the book. And I love to do it, but when I do one of these programs, it's never the same twice because I don't use a script. I just look at the pictures and say what comes out of my head. So thank you for all the terrific questions and for everybody. The last time I checked the participants, it was over 100. So that's great. I'm glad there was so much interest.
If you still have time for 2 more questions here, somebody at Robin Jasko asked, did local Reading, PA folks go to the mountain resorts?
Some of them did. There were all sorts of resorts up there, from the White House Hotel to Dangler's Glen, the Centennial Springs, and also the Highland House. And local people were welcome at all of those places. And all of those places, by the way, all specialized in the Berks County specialty, which is chicken and waffles. If you didn't serve chicken and waffles back in those days, you were out of here. But the only hotel that did not cater to local people was the Neversink Mountain Hotel. It was really set up to gear itself towards out-of-town visitors from Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore. And so they really shunned local visitors to the point where if they knew that local people were coming up the mountain, say on a car, they would go out on the patio and put the chairs up against the wall, the rocking chairs, as a way of saying, we don't want you here. And this attitude really is one of the things that killed the hotel eventually. The people that invested in the hotel never really made their money back. And one of the reasons was because of the tunnel vision that the owners and investors had about who they wanted to be their customers. Bad mistake. Any other questions?
Let's see there, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Becky Dodson asks, my great-grandfather lived on, is it Loper Road? His name was Philip Loper or Leper, I'm not sure. Do you know anything about that? He had a woodworking shop.
I can't picture where.
It's Loeper.
Okay, I can't picture where that would be. It must be on the foothills surrounding. I mean, the one road that I am familiar with down farther is the Clapperthal Road, and that road goes right behind the cemetery, and I've used that a lot to go hiking on Neversink. I like to start from Clapperthal Glen, and there's a parking lot that the Berks Nature has built down at the end of that road that is a great place to park while you're up hiking. But there are a lot of roads. There are a lot of little roads. There are a lot of little roads that kind of sneak around. One on the Reading side is Highland Road, which I think is the last one that is on the way up. Highland Road was an event originally meant to go from Mount Penn all the way over to 13th Street. And it never did. It never went as far as 19th even. It stopped around 20th Street. So it runs from about 27th Street down to 20th Street and stopped there. But it's still on maps of the time, because it was a paper street. The city was prepared for it, but it never happened. But Lopper or Loper Road, I'm not familiar with that.
It looks like we have one more question here from Mike Scheckler asking, is there a map out there that has ruins marked out on existing trails?
The map that I have in the book, the one that I showed in the program, shows where all of the buildings were on the mountain. As you walk around, especially on the south or the south side of the mountain or the Reading side, there are some signboards that are still up that show you what was there. Like Dengler's Glen Hotel has one of those signboards, and it will show you what the hotel looked like. And you can still see a little bit of ruins there. Some places, though, especially on the Reading side of the mountain, and I won't comment why, but those signs have been destroyed or removed. So, your best bet really is to, there are some maps on the Berks Nature site. There's some great hiking maps that show all the trails on Neversink. And I'm not sure if those show where the ruins are or not, but they are good resources to use if you're hiking on Neversink and you're not sure where to go, because there are a couple of places on Neversink that are privately owned, and some of the owners up there would rather not see your face. So, it's best to know where to stick to, which trails to stick to.
We have one more question pop up asking if all the supplies for the hotels had to come up by trolley.
Well, the ones that came up to the Highland House did. They had to come up by that inclined plane that I showed. That's why, part of the reason why the inclined plane was built, so they would bring up lumber and all the other supplies that were needed to build the hotel. And the plane also served to bring up customers too. Now, with the Neversink Mountain Hotel, there were smallish roads that went up there, but they would have had to bring a lot of the materials up on Neversink cars because the roads were very poor that went up there. The Neversink Mountain Railroad was running in 1890, and the hotel didn't start to be built until 1892. So by 1892, they could have used the railroad to bring materials up. Not so with the Highland House. That was built 5 years before the railroad. And so they were responsible for their own transportation. All the other hotels, the Centennial Springs, they were all built before these resorts from the railroad. And so I don't know how they might have gotten, there were roads that went to these places, like the White House, which is just at the end of 9th Street. All you'd have to do is bring the stuff out 9th Street, really easy. The other two were easily accessible from Exeter Township on roads, and they would have had to come in on wagons in those days. So I think that should cover that one. Any others have popped up?
Just one here asking if the inclined plane started at 10th Street.
No, the inclined plane originally started on South Street, which is a little street just up from Cotton, which doesn't exist on the other side of 13th. It only runs from 13th Street down to 9th. And it originally ran from South Street, right in the middle of 13th Street, by the way, up the side of the mountain to the hotel. And within 5 years, the people that were starting to have houses built around there really were getting annoyed because they couldn't get by the station at the bottom because it took up so much room. And it also made all kinds of noise at all times of night. And so by 1890, the city forced the Highland House owners to dismantle the lower part of the inclined plane and move it up to where Fairview Street is now. So if you've got a metal detector and you go up to just above Fairview Street on 13th, you might find some interesting things up there, because that's after 1890, that's where the incline plane stopped. And it wasn't long after that that it was torn down altogether. So it had a relatively short life, but I think it served its purpose.
So I'm not seeing any more questions, but checking the chat, there's been a lot of people thanking you for a great program. And a lot of people are excited for the next time we take a hike on Neversink. And Jerry Hafer, or Gary, my apologies if I said that incorrectly, said, "Thank you, this has been great. My grandfather was caretaker at Degler's Glen, and my grandmother was raised on the farm you showed around the Forest Hill Cemetery." So
wow. There are so many great stories like that. One of the people that I talked to was, he lived on Neversink Road, and his name is escaping me at the moment, but when he was a boy, he used to catch frogs in the pond at the back of the cemetery, and he would walk them up to Dengler's Glen Hotel, and which usually made chicken, but frog legs were, kind of a diversion. And he would take them up there. And his mother used to work in the hotel up there. And when they were getting ready to redecorate it, I think in 1929, before their fire, there were a couple of pictures on the wall that were actually reverse paintings that she asked the owner, what are you going to do with those? And the owner said, well, nothing. You want them? And she said, yeah. And she took them, and they took them down. Sucamelli was his name, Frank Sucamelli. And they took the pictures down there, and they had them hanging for, years. And Frank and his wife since then have both passed away. And their kids recently gave all of their Neversink memorabilia to me, including the pictures. So that's really one of my prized possessions. Okay, let's see. Is anything more popped up?
More thank yous, and Bradley Copeland is asking if you have any information on the trolley house on Circle Avenue.
Wow, Circle Avenue. I'm familiar with a trolley station, I guess, at 36th and Parkdale Avenue. But Circle Avenue, I'm not familiar with that. I know that there were and I'm still learning about trolleys. As you know, Vicki, we did a program, a BCTV program, just recently on trolley cars, which we did at the horse car down in the basement of the Berks History Center. And I'm looking forward to doing slide programs on trolley cars of Reading and Berks County, but I still have some things to learn about those, and I'm working on that right now and gathering up my pictures so that by the time the virus has passed, which was hopefully maybe later this year, I can start doing in-person slide programs again, and I can do one on trolley cars, but there are some weak spots that I still have on those. There were some names that came up that were saying, thank you for the program and stuff, and I recognize some of them. Harry Eisenweiss was one, and Harry's family is from the same neighborhood in Reading that I grew up in, and they had a store just about a block away from where I lived. So we're, even though we're not old friends, I never knew him when he was younger, but I know of his parents' story. Bradley Copeland. Wonder if any. I'm not sure which pictures Mr. Copeland would be looking for.
Oh, I think he sort of added to his question about the Circle Street Trolley House, and he said that it's at 37th and Circle and wonders if anyone has pictures of it.
Yeah, one place that I would look is in George Miser's Passing Scene volumes. He's got lots of pictures of trolley places there, but there were stops in so many places along the line, hundreds of stops, and you know, there may be pictures of some of them, and maybe there aren't pictures of others. There are also, I did want to mention two very good. Hi, Karen. I want to mention two very good books that I rely on, not just for trolley stuff, but also for Neversink information. One was Trolleys of Berks County, which was written by Harry Faison back in the 70s. Excellent book and lots of great pictures in it. And also there are two, Reading Transit Trolleys is one, and there's another one whose name I can't remember, but they were both written by Ben Rohrbeck, who's a very, very knowledgeable about trolleys and railroads in this area. And if you can locate one of those books, you can learn an awful lot about trolleys from them. I saw Karen Wolkowitz's name pop up on there, and she's a friend of mine from my days at WEEU, and her dad, Kaz, who I worked with for many years. Oh, now I can see some of the questions. I think we got.
Yes, any questions that were in the Q&A tab, I read out to you. Oh, somebody just asked, is the second book out for sale?
I guess by second book, John means the second Neversink book. It's available in several places locally, but unfortunately, most of those places are closed right now. And so the easiest way, frankly, to get the second edition of the Neversink book and any of my other two books, which are one on Pandora and one on Carsonia Park, would be on one of my two websites. Neversink.org is one, and the other is carsoniapark.com. And I also sell my books on eBay, and they're available on eBay in combination. So if you want like the second and third book, but not the first one, you know, I've got selections for those. But on the websites, they're all listed separately. So, but that's, you know, all of the places who handle the book in person, including the Pagoda right now, are still all closed. They're available, I see, at the Berks History Center Museum store, which is true. I'm not sure what the availability is of the hours for the museum store. I'm sure Vicki could answer that much better than I can.
Yes, the museum store. So Elise is our front desk, amazing staff at the front desk. We're available Wednesdays through Saturdays, 9 to 3. If you call the number that she just put in the chat, we'd be happy to arrange shipping a book to you if you are interested.
Okay. And of course, you know, any that are sold on my websites or, you know, on eBay are all shipped. I always ship those the next day. So it's pretty quick shipping. Let's see. That was the questions and answers. See what the chat turns up. Oh, now I'm seeing all kinds of things. I think we've got all of those too.
Yep, it looks like comments and questions have sort of fizzled out here.
Okay.
Thank you so much for a great program. I don't know, Vicki, if you'd like to make any closing remarks.
I just want to remind you about our third Thursday program on the 21st. It starts at 7 p.m. and it'll be a live concert virtually with Dave Klein. And then, of course, tune in for our second Saturday program in February, which is about the orphans home at Bethany. And thank you so much, Paul. That was a wonderful program.
Well, thank
You
you.
had, you maxed out at 100 people. That was our
I-
limit, and you did it.
I just wanted to mention that one thing I didn't have this time that I had the first time I did the program were the grandfather clocks at the History Center. They all chime at 11 o'clock, and which is kind of a subtle way of saying you should be just about done by now. And I didn't have the grandfather clocks, but considering the pauses that we had and everything, I don't think I ran too long.
And thanks a lot to all our viewers. I appreciate, Amber, your technological help today. And again, Paul, thank you, and have a great day, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. You did the same.
Thank you. Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.